Hey everybody, what is up? I hope you had a chance to listen to last week's episode where we talked about growing your podcast audience. And if you did, you heard me talk about borrowing audiences or going on other people's podcasts as a guest to show what you're an expert at and bring people back to your podcast as a listener for you. And maybe there's also some people out there who are thinking about being a professional guest. You know, maybe you're not even considering having a podcast, but you want to be a better guest on other podcasts. Well, this episode today is going to be for you because we're going to talk about how to find other podcasts to be a guest on, how to make sure that your pitches and all that sort of stuff is really great so that you get booked. And then also when you go on, how to be the best guest you possibly can be. And first and foremost, I want to come back to something that I talk about a lot, and that is sound quality. If you're going to be a guest on someone else's podcast, have a podcast mic. Have a mic that sounds good, like the ATR 2100X from Audio-Technica that we talk about all the time. Just simply having that microphone plugged into your computer with a USB port is going to be hands down one of the easiest things you can do to improve your sound quality. And then wearing headphones during the interview so that you don't have the bleed of the sound when they talk coming back into your microphone. So always first think about sound quality because that will make life easier for the other podcast host. Now, the next thing you need to do if you want to be guesting on other podcasts is to have something we call like a press sheet or a podcast one sheet, something that makes it easier for people to understand who you are. And this is, you use this to pitch podcasts, podcast host on interviewing you. So it has things like a link to your headshot and where to download it, a short bio for people to be able to read maybe in the intro. And then things like having topics that you can talk about, a topic that you talk about that you're an expert at that is phrased in an enticing way, like, what every business needs to know about Instagram or how to make killer social media videos with a phone for less than $500, things like that. And then think about in those topics, what are questions that the host could ask you and share those questions, pull them from topics like your lead magnet or things like that. And open-ended questions like what are the biggest mistakes in blah, blah, blah? What strategies, what benefits, where do I start? How do I do this or that? And then share how you might answer those questions so that the host has a chance to see how you're going to answer ahead of time and maybe come up with follow-up questions in advance of the interview. And then you always want to have things like links to your website, your calls to action, your lead magnets, or things like that that you might share in the interview to make sure that the host has that information. So a one sheet, a press sheet, whatever you want to call it, is really a big deal. And then you want to prep the host with those quality questions ahead of time. So that's the press sheet. And I want to go a little bit more into some of those questions that you can share to prepare the host ahead of time. You can modify, some of these are example questions. And if you take these example questions and you share them with the host, it makes it so much easier for them to say yes to interviewing you because it's a no-brainer for them. They don't have to do as much work. And the way you frame your questions makes a world of difference. So give this some preparation as to frame the discussion in a natural way for them so that you can help guide them and make it easier. Now, a great way to close these questions is with a powerful quote as well from your keynote message or your mission or your vision or whatever. So include things like that in your answer. Make your answer sometimes something that's easy for them to tweet out. Think about their promotion and that they're going to have to do for the interview. When you make it easy for the host, you make it easy for them to say yes. So here are some more examples of questions that you can use to fill in your press sheet that you can also include when you email your pitch. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So here's some example questions. Like, what is one of the biggest mistakes that most personal brands make with their Instagram? I mentioned that. So your answer might be something like how to convert your personal Instagram profile to a business Instagram profile if you haven't already done so, plus steps you'll need to take before you do, why you should never click follow all those sorts of things. Here's another question. What if I have personal friends on my Instagram account who don't necessarily want to follow my business stuff? So the answer might be, well, here's how you can sync your contacts to reach your potential organic followers. So those are just a few examples of questions that you could use that are going to give the host something to think about, something to follow up on. And remember, try to make them really clear. Try to include, tweetables, soundbite type answers so that they can share those in social media when they're promoting the episode itself. So let's talk about reaching out to hosts, and I'll share in a little bit like some places where you can find other podcasts that you can pitch and things like that. But let's talk about when you actually find someone that you want to reach out to. Here's the type of email that you could send them, okay? And it's going to combine some of the stuff from the press sheet. First of all, I know reaching out can feel challenging, and you don't want to overcomplicate things or overthink this, okay? Keep it short, simple, and tasteful. And first of all, before you even write this email, when you're looking for other podcasts to be on, please, 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 please don't just send out cold email pitches to everyone. Find podcasts that are complementary to your expertise or your authority or the message that you have. Find podcast hosts who you feel like you could really help their audience by being on their show. Don't just go willy-nilly and email a bunch of people. Really think about it. Take some time to listen to their show. Listen to a couple of episodes, or at least read their description. Go to their website so you fully understand what their podcast is about, and tell them how you feel like your message or the things that you're going to do will really help their audience. So here's the type of email or message that you might send. You say, hey, host name, I loved your podcast episode last week about blah. Really include some proof that you actually listened to that episode, and share your thoughts. Okay. Share your thoughts about what you heard in that episode. So I would love to be a guest on your show is the next part of that. And share some short credentials or share your bio. Okay. This is why I think I'd be a great guest. Here are some of the things I'm doing. Here's some of the things I teach, et cetera, et cetera. You know how that goes. And then share, hey, here are a few questions that you could ask me that will keep things conversational and help set both of us up to deliver huge value to your listeners. And then share those questions, okay? And share your answers, just a brief answer so they know. And then close the email really simply. If you'd like, I can set up a meeting between the two of us so that we can get on your show. By the way, if you want to check out my website, here it is, or visit my social profile, blah, blah, blah. Thank you so much. And then sign your name. So very simple template. And I will share a link actually to a pack that I have, the Power Publicity Pack, in the show notes where you can get this. And it has the email templates. It has this directory of places where you can go to find other podcasters. It has the press sheet, the one sheet description and the things you should do to prepare your host. But then I also have a bunch of templates in there as well of press sheets among a few other things that you can check out when you go to that website. So, okay, finally, you're ready. You know what your pitches are going to be, but you need to find some people to pitch. Okay. So here is a resource list where you can find other shows to be a guest on. Okay. Now, first of all, I would start with people you know, okay? Start in your circles. But then you could also connect with other experts by maybe joining some masterminds. I have my podcasters mentormind, where it's a bunch of other podcasters. And all of the time, I'm encouraging them to work with each other and go on each other's shows if it works out, okay? If you're in some Facebook groups with other like-minded podcasters or podcast hosts, you could ask to do a podcast swap. Okay. That would be where you interview them, they interview you. I also like the discussion where you could have one discussion and it would be used on both people's podcasts, no matter what. You don't actually have to do 2 interviews. Okay. You could reach out to shows that you actually listen to, okay, that you feel like and you're like, maybe they would really benefit from hearing what I have to say about this. Okay. Attend online networking events, attend live events, tell people you have a podcast, ask if they have a podcast, ask about it. Those are great places to find other shows to be on. And then when you have guests on your show, if they happen to have a podcast, always offer to go on their show. always offer to go on their show and make that happen. Now, you can also try some services out there. There are some free sites like Poddit, PODDIT.net, that is a directory of other podcasters where you can put up your own, hang out your shingle and say, hey, this is my podcast. I'm interested in these types of guests. You can pitch other people and they will pitch you as well. There is a service, used to be called Spot a Guest, but now it's called podcastguest.com that you can check out. Podcast.co has a matchmaker site. It's podcast.co/matchmaker. There are services out there, Interview Connections, Interview Valet, where you could pay monthly to be booked on other shows. In next week, actually, I'm going to have a guest on the show, Angie Trueblood. It's actually one of those discussion episodes where Angie has a service as well and also teaches people how to pitch and improve their pitches. There's a site called podmatch.com and perfectpodcastguest.com. Those are just a few. And I also have a bunch of episodes that you can check out as you go back where I talk about how and where to find shows to be a guest on. So take a look at those. Really, I can't say enough about going on other podcasts. I can tell you that in the growth of my business as a podcast production agency, at least half of my clients are people who heard me interviewed on other shows. And that's how they first heard of me. That's how they first started working with me. And it happens all the time. I get more clients from doing those types of interviews than I do from Facebook ads or from growing my email list. Now, growing my email list and running ads are better for selling products and things like that. But in terms of finding clients and people trusting me, more of them have come from hearing me on other podcasts that they trusted first. So I want you to consider this. I think it would be a great idea for you. And that's all I have for today. I will see you next week with that interview discussion with Angie Trueblood. With market oversaturation, people are overwhelmed by the vast amount of content available to consume. That's why podcasting is such an essential strategy for business promotion. However, starting your own podcast is no simple feat. You need the right guidance to make sure that your podcast stands out from the rest and puts you on the path towards success. That's where my podcast launch intensive comes in. It provides a 10-week intensive training course with 4 to 5 activities for people to complete each week, allowing them to overcome the common obstacles for a podcast launch. The main goal of the podcast launch intensive is to help you save on time, effort, and money caused by common do-it-yourself podcast mistakes. It's about making intentional decisions that will help you get started and find success in your podcasting journey. Join the intensive today. Visit DannyOsmond.com/PLI to find out more.